Alright, welcome back to MGD 111. Today we're going to talk about something called a clipping path. Now in our last exercise, we outlined this car and we created this nice shadow under it and everything. While we still have the car selected, we have the option of creating something called a clipping path, which gives us a lot of uses when we're bringing this image into a graphic design project or a web project. Let me show you an example of what we're talking about here. This is a PDF of a catalog page from one of my clients. And I have to go through and cut out all of these jerseys, individual pictures. They're on mannequins. I have to remove the background, get rid of it, and all these little detail shots here. Now notice how this image is sitting here with a white background, and you can see how the image is able to overlap other pictures. Well, this is created in InDesign. This overlap right here is not created in Photoshop. What we can do is create individual photos and then put them in our layout as we see fit. Here's another case where you see them overlapping, and it's not just a rectangle that's overlapping, it's the actual shape of the object. So how do we do that? Well, we need what's called a clipping path, and the clipping path is going to follow this line and allow us to, when we import it into InDesign, process it this way. Another thing a clipping path allows us to do, notice how this text is wrapping around the picture here. I didn't have to do that by hand. I was able to create a text box like this and tell the text to wrap around the image following the clipping path plus a certain amount of space. So it automatically wraps around these images. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to, while we're processing our picture, once we've deleted the background, done all this other stuff to it, that would be a good point right there before you deselect, because we don't want to have to try to reselect all of this stuff. Before we deselect, we want to create a clipping path. So we're going to need our paths palette here, which if you have your layers palette up, it usually is part of that stack right there. If not, go find it under Windows here. So paths, what does that do for us? Well, it's empty, so what we need to do is, under this little menu here, we need to create a new path. So we're going to click on it. It's going to ask us to name it. Most of the time I only have a single path anytime I'm using a photo, so I usually skip this. But I'll just call it car outline, assuming that we had other ones to do. Again, this isn't really an important step because 99% of the time you're probably only going to have one clipping path anyway. And click OK. Now we're not done. While we're in this menu, and you'll notice it shows up as a path now, I need to click on that, or keep it selected, and go under here again, and we now have an option for clipping path. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to give us the name here. Flatness, device pixels. I usually don't worry about that at this point. I fix that in other programs like InDesign when I bring it in. So I click OK. And now we have a car outline. And in a cute little detail here, you'll see that our path, the text is now outlined. So what does that do for us? Well, now it created this path that eliminates everything that's outside of this picture if we want it to. Now we didn't even have to delete this background. We could have left it in place and it would clip it out for us. But the cool thing is it is going to honor this little jaggedy or this little soft edge here. That'll be part of it. So if I bring this picture into an layout now, like so, if I were to put it on this page here and overlap this picture, the back of the car would wrap, we would be able to see the jersey behind the back of the car here. We'd be able to see the jersey behind that little bit of soft ground and everything. And we're able to overlap images using this. And then I'd have to create some other settings. Unfortunately, this isn't an InDesign class, so I'm not going to show you how to do that here. But that is how we create a clipping path for a photo. Generally, you only need this if you're doing some sort of weird cutout of the picture. If you plan on using the picture as a rectangle, or a simple shape that you can create in another program, you don't need to worry about this. This is only for an oddly shaped program that you want to silhouette. If you're creating a PNG file, a PNG, to use on a website, you would want to do this process too. Because we can do the same thing here. We can create an image that we put on a web page, and if there's a background color on the page or a background image on the page, again, it won't just be a white box with this car in it. The image will actually be the outline of this. But we need that clipping path in order to make that happen. So practice that. It's not something that becomes visible, but if you get something that looks like this in your paths, you've done it correctly.